Good evening. Today was nice and chill. Not that the majority of the last week hasn't been, but after the dentist yesterday, I appreciated it a little bit extra today. Finished the first Mass Effect. Uh, M4 Part 2 is still a fantastic song. Yeah, I forgot to mention this yesterday, but I finally decided to mess around with the performance mode option in the graphics. I thought, um, since I have an older PS4, because it has prioritized graphics or prioritized frame rate, and I thought mine being an older PS4, for the most part, there wasn't going to be a big jump in frame rate until I remembered. I say remembered. I didn't remember it until after I tried it out and realized that uh, it's all 60 frames per second now, which may have been true on PC. Um, I don't know. And if it wasn't true officially, I'm sure there were ways to unlock the frame rate or change at least change the frame lock on PC. Config files are your best friend because they have options that are not in options. Learned that with the last Remnant, which I knew it for a while, but that's the first one I've really done that on. Normally in-game options are enough for me. But I am becoming, I always used to say 60 is not important. I'll take a stable 30 over an unstable 60 any day, and I still will. But back then, I wasn't. That was before, more console games. He got to the point where they could run a solid 60, and B, before I learned how to. Before I was really paying attention on how to fine tune settings on my PC for, the best balance of performance and graphics. Because, that's a long-winded way of saying I didn't think it would come to this, but I'm slowly becoming a bit of an FPS elitist. I don't think I'll ever hit I have too much nostalgia for old games to the point where I don't think I'll ever hit. I can't play a game unless it runs at least a solid 60 FPS. Like, I don't think I'll ever be at that level. But, like, at this point, I want to say maybe preferred graphics would show more on a Pro or on, like, the Series X or PS5. Which would probably just be 4K, which I don't have a setup that supports 4K anyway. I have a great TV. It's got an excellent display, but it's also like, I think I got it in 2009. It's an older TV. It's got a high refresh rate and really decent latency, which my dad had the presence of mind to actually look for when he bought it. Like, he specifically looked up good TVs for playing games, and I think it's 250. I think it's like 255 hertz or something like that, which might be a bit BS, but it means it's perfectly happy to run 60 frames. And I think if I had the hardware to do it stably, it's the display itself is capable of I think up to 120 or something like that, but 60 is fine for now. Now that's, considering I've spent the majority of my life in general playing things ranging from 24 to 30 frames, uh, because for example, the N64 and I think even the PlayStation didn't always hit 30. That it used to be the standard. Um, it may have been film that set the standard for 24. I think like reel to reel film is 24, and like that's still the standard for film. Anyway, I'm getting off track. That's just statistics I'm kind of pulling out of my ass based on what I remember hearing both from Vinny and Matt and Craig on Welcome to the Basement. Those two being true film buffs. Which wasn't throwing shade at Vinny, it was throwing shade at me. I very much prefer interactive media these days. I just do, because I'm a bit ADD, I guess. I was diagnosed for it when I was a kid. I don't know if I am still. Which, again, is a long-winded way of saying I have to be like fiddling with something. And so, like, video games are really the perfect medium because I am playing them. So, and even then, I still like, if it's a game I've played before, I still like having something on in the background. It's it's very rare for me these days to experience an entire game without any background noise. I'm trying to think back to the recent new releases. Story missions in Age of Calamity, I always turned off background noise for, but not for grinding, God no. Same with Strikers, Persona 5 Strikers, or Scramble, or whatever you want to call it. Though I do think I had it off for a decent little chunk between, especially when it was either, cutscenes, even if they weren't fully voiced. So like even if they were like side story cutscenes, and when I was wandering around town, or blitzing a new area in a dungeon, or a story area in a dungeon, I mostly had background noise off. But God, when I knew it was going to be several minutes of like just fighting and stuff, I had background noise on. I'm trying to think of another good example of something I played recently for the first time. Last story that I have, I think it was more. Well, no, that game had some decent banner in it, similar to P5S. So it was all for a decent chunk of that. There's a very specific example back before I rearranged my room, I think. Thinking about it more, Death Stranding, I'd find myself often like forgetting to turn my background noise back on. Not to say I didn't have it and didn't prefer it, but like I'd turn it off for a conversation or whatever, and then I'd end up back in the field, and I tended to like it off for the experience of it. Like if I was exploring a new area, or God knows, whenever a song came on, absolutely background noise went off. But as far as getting down into the grind of it, I did like some background noise on. I really did enjoy that game. I'm looking forward to the day that I've forgotten enough of it to play it again. Um, what else? I can't really think of it right now. I mean, like Firewatch, I rarely had background noise on for, but that's because that's literally an interactive story and not as much of just a game. Like the that's a game built around conversations, and if you're playing noise over the conversations, what's the point of playing the game? It's bugging me. I can't think of it. I'm like kind of going back through games I played, trying to like trace the thread. Um, 7 Remake, I rarely had background noise on for. In fact, that might be what I'm thinking of the more I think about it. Between enjoying the music, enjoying the bits of banter, um, it not being overly grindy in a playthrough if you're just playing through it. Like, even like doing side quests and stuff, for the most part, I was relatively fully engaged. Um, the combat was good at, requiring your attention, if not demanding it, even in easier fights, because, like, where they're stupid easy if you're paying attention, um, you could, like, easily stop paying attention to, like, your health or something, and then be, oh, wait, why am I dead now? Oh, okay. Um, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think it was Final Fantasy VII Remake. Recently being the game that I played with the least amount of background noise my first playthrough. Um, Definitely had it on when I was uh, doing hard mode and like grinding out the Colosseums and stuff. But for the most part, um, on that first playthrough, I did not have background noise playing. So much of that game was voiced too. Like all of that game was voiced. I genuinely can't think of anything that was just text as far as conversations go. So that might have a lot to do with it. Um, if I'm playing an older RPG that's not fully voiced or even no voice at all, um, good example being Final Fantasy VI, the first time I played that all the way through, which was recent-ish, but not. But like when I say recent, it was like 2 years ago, something like that. It was a it was before Three Houses came out. I know that for a fact. Um, anyway, like I cut it off for the music here and there, or at the very least, kept it up pretty loud. But that aside from when there's like a fast moving scene or whatever, for the most part, you can get away with not having it on there. But anyway, getting back to what I did today, Mass Effect 2 also looks fantastic. And while there is still a step up from ME1, I really, really, really have to applaud the amount of work they put into graphically getting ME1 closer to the rest of the series. The armor detailing is so much better in the first one, to the point where, like, that's a lot more consistent so far. Like, yeah, your team's getting unique outfits, but a lot of a lot of the run-of-the-mill people that are wearing uniforms, like, are just like generic armors and stuff. I kind of recognize them either from people in the, like, either from my own armors in ME1 or other armors in ME1 that were on generic soldiers. It's like they really, really worked to unify the look a bit more of everything. So, like, seriously, hats off to them for that. And even that is, like, I noticed in it, I know this for a fact now that I'm back in Mass Effect 2, which was always a bit higher up graphically. They didn't just catch Mass Effect up with what it looked like at the end of the trilogy. They set a unified high bar and matched it evenly, or at least so far. I only say that because I haven't gotten to 3 and I've looked into as little as possible. I haven't seen 3 with my own eyes running on my system. I don't expect it to be a ridiculous amount higher than everything else, or lower than everything else, obviously. But yeah, just the amount of it really does kind of boil down to just the amount of detailing in general, from facial textures to environmental textures. And I know I keep harping on that, but it's really, really fascinating what just changing a wall from a flat color to, when I say a flat color, I just mean like as a surface, it looking like uniform plastic or something, to weathered, giving it a little bit of weathering, a little bit, it's really something what that does. Also, lighting. Like, I at least personally think for a good while I took lighting engines for granted. But, well, I mean, Wind Waker HD kind of just proved how much a lighting engine can change a game. Because it has such, Wind Waker itself had such a distinct art style that it hasn't exactly aged. And by that I mean, you can throw the GameCube version into a certain aquatic animal, and it looked relatively new. Some crust here and there, but for the most part, look perfectly fine. But compared to the HD edition, that lighting engine really, really is a game changer. And I think that's another thing that's gone a long way for this this legendary edition of the trilogy so far, and I'm excited to see more of it. But anyway, 20 minutes is plenty long enough, I think. Darn. It's like Mass Effect made me less depressed and more willing to talk about things again. It's almost like this series is really important to me. And even though I keep saying that, it keeps proving that it is. Anyway, I'll catch you all tomorrow. Good night.